So there are, this is part 4 of the Khoodeelaar campaign, World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street. And we are at page 6 of the Dirty Digger Rupert Murdoch owned scum. And it says on the page 6, a Muslim convert. Now, that sentence is wrong, misleading. He's not a Muslim convert. A non-Muslim who converted to Islam is not a Muslim convert. A convert to Islam. That's the format it should be. Otherwise, it is misleading. Apart from that, this says that he stabbed a prayer leader in the neck in front of worshippers at the central London mosque. Now, he has been convicted of that crime. And he's been described as homeless Daniel Horton, 30, aged 30. Has admitted stabbing Rafat Maglad, 70, at the London Central Mosque in Regent's Park. Horton asked to be sent to jail, to be punished, rather than be made the subject of a hospital order. Sentence was adjourned at Southwark Crown Court. Now, there is a kind of evidential trail. Too many so-called converts to Islam are found to be doing criminal activities, including quite a large number, disproportionately large numbers of those reported converts being involved in alleged terrorist activities. Most notorious of which has been the shoe bomber, who was caught wearing a kind of shoe equipped with explosives. The question is, why do these people who convert to a faith, another faith, kind of do these things? Because most of in terms of the population in Western Europe or in the USA, which is where all these things keep happening, the ordinary people who are kind of generally socially, I'm not talking about the kind of strictly religious kind of way. I'm talking about the social demography of the Muslims in North America and the Western Europe. Mostly is made up of people coming from Muslim countries or Muslim majority countries. And the evidence is that most of the people, if not every single one, go to the Western countries or come to the Western countries or go to North America mainly for economic purposes, in order to be able to kind of have income that is in comparison with the income they would have in their originating countries. On the whole, better for the same kind of number of hours and same type of work. So therefore, there is no evidence of these majority of these people being involved in doing kinds of jihad or getting involved really seriously in politics even. I shall come to that kind of fine concept of politics by the migrant communities at a later stage, because there is the tendency of politicizing these people, not by the host countries' political parties. For example, in the UK, the Labour Party, despite the fact that it has got consistently bigger numbers of Muslims voting for it, it has got no real loyalty. The real political allegiance actually is given to the people controlling the parties back in the countries of origin. And in the case of the UK and the USA, the religious kind of identities of people coming from the subcontinent, let's say, of Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, are kind of predictable. For example, when the USA was kind of lost to Donald Trump, I mean, Trump found a kind of ready platform with Narendra Modi in India. And most of the reports suggest that the Modi kind of friendship with Donald Trump wasn't an accident. That Modi and Trump agreed on the need to treat Muslims as threats. And when the Burmese committed the genocide against the Rohingya Muslims, who have been there for 600-700 years, Arakan, which is now called Rakhine or Rakhine, Arakan has been a place or a region dominated by mainly Muslim population for centuries. So Modi flew to Rangoon, Burma, to congratulate Aung San Suu Kyi and be seen to be congratulating her in the thick of the worldwide condemnation that was being aimed at Aung San Suu Kyi for her heading the regime that had been committing the genocide of the Muslims. the Burmese Muslims. The Rohingyas are Burmese, whatever the title of the country now, Myanmar, but it is Burma that we should be kind of using, because Burma conveys a continuity of reference, let's say, that can then express and communicate the facts more easily. Myanmar is a kind of antithetical to that commentary and narrative. And the connection of the British imperialists with Burma is very relevant. So when Narendra Modi went to Burma and congratulated Aung San Suu Kyi, pronounced Suki or Suchi, whichever way is correct, I don't kind of really think it's important. It is the person that we are identifying. And he was doing that while Trump was either playing silent or, in effect, sending messages to the Burmese that they were right to commit genocide against the Muslims. So when these people, like this convert, Horton, who nearly killed an imam in the mosque, Central London Mosque, when they are kind of, they convert, I mean, how do they convert to Islam and what is the reason? Why do they convert to Islam? Because the press, the media, the public kind of narrative around Islam and Muslims in the West, across North America and Western Europe, is and has been one of hostility. And it would be interesting to know why these people, despite all of that, choose to convert to Islam. That is number one question. That's the logical question. The second question, skeptical question, rationally raised, is, are they genuine? And this can easily lead the skeptics to the correlation between the converted so-called Muslims and all these too many incidents of bombing and terrorism, or attempted bombing or attempted terrorism by these so-called converted Muslims. That leads to the logical conclusion that most of the people would kind of come to and reach are these, therefore, also provocateurs. That is to say, that disguised as Muslims, and in that disguise, they commit crimes that draw attention to Muslims generally and depict the Muslims generally as violent and terrorist orientated or terrorist linked or prone to commit terrorism. Now, this is one of the phenomena that the so-called Muslim leaders and the so-called Muslim organizations operating across the Western European countries and the North American kind of areas have remained silent about. If they haven't, and I have missed their kind of vocal status on this, then I have yet to see what it is the impact of their vocal kind of status or stand has been. I am, of course, talking universally, internationally, and I am not speaking in any shape or form as a part of a religious kind of platform. I am examining the evidence. And the evidence of the Fleet Street scum newspaper using the term Muslim convert is the one that I started with on this part. And then I'm now into the significant numbers of converts, mainly white people, some African origin, but mostly white people, European people, reportedly becoming Muslims. But the significant thing also is that a large number of them turn out to be terrorists. I mean, how is that? Did they become Muslims in order to kind of get themselves additionally pumped and triggered into the kind of terrorism that they fantasize about as outsiders before they convert? If they did so, where in the Muslim community, the Muslim demographies, are these people that are secret plotters against the kind of wider society? I mean, I have been around, quite apart from my personal position, I've been around Muslims more than I've been around non-Muslims. And my complaint against the Muslims, and I'm talking about the ones that claim to be politically active, conscientious, and intellectually aware, and all the rest of it. My complaint against majority of them, or almost all of them, or all my contemporaries everywhere, is that they're too timid in terms of intellectual rigor and intellectual independence and intellectual internationalism, that they don't question the behavior of the Muslims that actually tolerate this kind of infiltration by the converts, who then damage the collective image of the ordinary Muslim. And there is no debate. As far as I'm concerned, there is no debate that I have seen or heard about that is taking place or has been taking place with the initiative of so-called Muslim leaders dealing with this issue. When I say that, I also imply and I also refer to the silence of these successions and sets of Muslim leaders on the question of the Pakistani, mainly Pakistani kind of origin. They're not necessarily born in Pakistan, but their ancestral kind of background is Pakistani. Pakistani origin men who have been this is not a conjecture, this is actually happening in the courtrooms. At least 100, if not more, Pakistani origin men over the last, let's say, 10 years, across the Yorkshire regions of England, northwest England, have been prosecuted and found guilty of raping and kind of prostituting and pimping the mainly white girls. How is that possible? And the answer is that the majority of the Muslim leaders in the UK, I'm not using the term I'm about to use for the first time against anybody. I am a lifelong campaigner against crooks and liars. Now, the majority of these Muslim leaders are in denial. And they are lying. And they're betraying and they're lying and they're letting down the rest of the community, at whose expense they parade their careers as Muslim leaders at every level in the UK. Now, there are several paradoxes entailed and involved in this serious series of criminality. First of all, anyone who genuinely believes in the Islamic values, universally defined, I mean, it would be anathema. It would be completely against their nature and their character and their agenda to commit crime, let alone condone crime. So how is it that in areas like Rochdale, Blackburn, and large parts of the Greater Manchester area, hundreds of white girls over a long period of time have been targeted by mainly gangs of Pakistan origin men, whose main purpose has been to abuse them, sexually abuse them, target them, violate them, and destroy their lives. And how could they be doing this for as long as they have been doing it? While the Muslim leaders have been saying prayers, leading prayer meetings in the mosques and other places over the years. This is a question. This is not the kind of detail of the answer. But the answer is that this suits the racists in the local Labour parties especially, who then claim wrongly that if the criminals, the known Pakistan origin sex gangsters and criminals, were apprehended, suspected, arrested, surveilled, whatever, and prosecuted, they say, these apologists and these liars say that there would have been backlash against the prosecutors, against the police, and against the law enforcing agencies, who would be then accused of racial harassment of the Pakistani criminals. Let's say this. In our book, in the book of this campaign, and in my book, no criminal has got any right to invoke any religion, whatever, Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Christianity, whatever. No criminal. I mean, once they decide to commit crime, and especially once they decide to commit such a grievous crime as organizing sexual abuse of children or anybody, the victim doesn't have to be a child for the crime to be treated as crime. So no criminal has got any justification whatsoever to link their criminality to their so-called belief, or to link their criminality to the perceived faith or lack of faith different from their own faith that is perceived to be the faith or faiths of the victims. Now, why are the imams of the mosque in each of the areas, why has no imam come out against these criminals? And they claim that if the criminals were targeted by the police or the law enforcing agencies, then the law enforcing agencies and the police would be accused of racism. That is absolute rubbish. Because every week, if not every day of the week, England, we're talking now mainly about England. Let's include Wales as well, because demographically that is a small part. So essentially it is England we're talking about. Every day, thousands of crimes are being kind of handled by the police. They're not handling all the crimes that they should be handling, but they are still handling at various kinds of stages thousands of crimes every day in England. And by the sheer force of the demography, significant numbers of criminals either apprehended, that is to say, followed, suspected, or put under surveillance are Muslims. And the police never would target them because they're Muslims. The set of complicated kind of triggers that trigger the police pursuing somebody only include the actual offenses. Police don't target, in the vast majority, overwhelming majority of the cases, the perpetrators because of the perpetrators' religion or lack of religion. So when they are persuaded, kind of perpetrators are pursued and kind of prosecuted eventually on other crimes, not those ones about talking about the Pakistani origin sexual offenders plotting and perpetrating sexual violations of the mainly white children. Other crimes are kind of perpetrated, and the perpetrators are caught, arrested, prosecuted, and sent to jail every single time. And there is no single protest against those actions by the police, the courts, etc., etc. And nobody is accusing them of being anti-Muslim. So when the Rochdale, Barnsley, and other Blackburn and other places where the main concentration of the Pakistan origin sexual offenders are based. Now this, when they were kind of being investigated by others because the police and the local councils failed to do the due kind of diligence and stop these exploitation and rapes and organized crimes against these children, mainly white children, white young girls. The councils and leading members of the police in the area come up with the excuse, completely fabricated excuse, that they were scared of being accused of racism. How did they come to that conclusion? It's like Donald Trump saying that the votes that were rigged against him were rigged in a physically impossible way. That is because the ballot paper that contained the box for the election of the president or the vote for the president also contained the boxes for the Congress and the Senate. So imagine millions of votes being rigged according to Trump. It would require every single ballot to be individually rigged, and it could not be hidden because there would be absolutely endless numbers of individual ballot paper that had to be taken out, and the vote that was cast in Trump's favor had to be deleted, and it could not be done secretly in the dark. And that is impossible. Similarly, if the Muslim criminals or criminals who are Muslims committing theft, burglary, other things other than sexual crimes. If they could be prosecuted without any protest from the Muslim body of the population in the area, how is it that the Muslim body would suddenly mobilize in the neighborhood whenever a sexual offender who happened to be Muslim, according to that excuse, was apprehended or arrested? That would mean that every single crime had to be kind of explained by reference to the presence of large numbers of kind of people from the neighborhood. This is impossible in a society. People don't behave like that. And it doesn't happen in England either. So the police, the local council, and the Labour Party have been lying or have been in denial. And they have not been lying to the detriment of the offender, Pakistani mainly men criminals. They have been lying at the expense of and to the detriment of these white, mainly white girls, victims of racism, because it is racist because they have been targeted as white girls. And their lives have been destroyed. So when the Dominic Cummings, and the line that is being paraded through Fleet Street today is that he understood the North, the Labour supporting northern areas better than anybody else, better than even the Labour Party. When that line is kind of put about, which it has been in the last 24 hours, whoever has put that about could only have thought about the opportunities, the electoral vulnerability and weakness of the Labour Party across the northern areas kind of offered to the Conservatives. Remember what I'm saying. It was not about the concern for those people, those areas. It is the exploitation. It is the disengagement from the needs of those people, mainly in the kind of socially deprived and economically deprived belts across the Yorkshire region and the north and northeast and northwest of England. So the Conservatives remain essentially a south of England kind of force politically. They are not north of England force. They don't care about the north of England. And this loss to the Tories of so many kind of parliamentary seats at the 12th of December 2012 election is not a permanent loss. It's a temporary loss. Why? Because Boris Johnson and Cummings have come out in their own true politically opportunistic and corrupt colors. So there is no ethical engagement with the people. There is no moral engagement with the people. There is no universal engagement with the people. The end is the number of votes they get. The end is to acquire as many seats at the election as they can. The end is not to liberate those areas from the clutches of corrupt, unaccountable councils and councillors, and corrupt, incompetent, negligent, contemptuous post holders in the law and order or law enforcing agencies. Now, whatever I have said in the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes, is not to be found in any of the papers, Fleet Street today. And that's what makes it world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, which entails necessarily world exclusive insight into the whole dysfunction and corruption of the British establishment, the British state. And we shall be continuing.